Okay, we are starting our program now. Good evening and namaskar, everybody. Thank you for joining this evening. I welcome each one of you to this yet another event where we will be discussing a very important and an interesting subject. This time around, we'll be discussing a book titled A Brief History of Science in India. And this has been written by Dr. Sabareesh, PA. The book is published by Garuda Publication, which is Delhi, Gurgaon based publishing house. It's a very fine book. I've got a copy of it. I don't know if you are able to see the book in my hand right now. So probably you're seeing it in reverse, but anyway, this is the book. I got it and it's really interesting a read. I strongly recommend that people go and buy this book and read it. It is available on Amazon. I'll give you more details a little later. The book is titled, as I mentioned, A Brief History of Science in India. But, if I were to title this book, I would have even called it as Short Guide to India's Scientific Glory. Or I would have even called it as a Stupid's Guide to India's Scientific History. Or I would have called it an ASA's Guide to Science in India. These are some of the titles that I came to my mind basically, but unfortunately these kind of titles today would be deemed unparliamentary if you only understand the joke that I'm trying to crack here on the unparliamentary terms that we find today. But anyway, this book basically traces India's scientific quest since pre-wave to the present day achievements, including the vaccine for the coronavirus that India developed. It's quite an interesting cover, basically, of the pre-Vedic scientific temper that Indians had, and what is the present day status of science and scientific inquiry that Indians do. It's a vast cover of subjects ranging from medicine, metallurgy, astronomy, you name it, it is there in the book, and I find it very interesting. In fact, many people abroad, and including some Indian scientists and many Indians who are educated through this Macaulay system of education and who read these colored history books that are prescribed as school texts over the last 70 years of independence, they would believe that India's contribution to science is zero, both literally and figuratively. The pun is definitely intended. It was not only the numerical zero without which any science involving calculations cannot exist. There are also many scientific truths and theories that we read today as Western inventions and discoveries that are really and truly of Indian origin. Those scientific truths include the concept of gravity. So unfortunately, we credit it to somebody else, a Britisher. In fact, the distance between the sun and earth is also calculated most accurately by Indians, even before the advent of the modern era, or even between earth and moon, the distance is calculated most accurately by Indians. The closest accuracies of the Indian origin. The rest all, the modern scientific study has proved the Indian calculations correct. Also, the idea of heliocentrism, basically, which means the sun is the center of the solar system. That is, earlier people used to believe that Earth is the center, but Indians were the first to say that sun is the center of the solar system. Our Navagraha that you find in temples are all with the center, the sun is in the center. So you can believe that Indians had quite a good scientific temper that way. If you also look at Earth, Indians were the first to call it round. We call it as Bhugol, Gol, which means round. We did not believe it is flat, like Westerners did all along. Also, India's Shushruta is credited with the first cataract surgery and cosmetic surgery. The surgical instruments used by Shushruta are still in use in modern surgeries also. Only that they have been bettered by the modern scientific methods, which is interesting. But the instruments are the same. They are still in use. Even human evolution, we can so easily understand it from the Dashavatar idea of India, Indian concept of Dashavatar, where we talk about life having begun in water, Matsyavatar. We start from there and it moves on to the land, the Kurma avatar, which is the tortoise avatar of Lord Vishnu, and then on to mammals, which is the Varaha avatar, the boar avatar that Vishnu took, and it goes on till Kalki avatar. So it's basically, if you study Dasavatar, it's nothing but the human evolution as we know as Darwin's theory these days. So human intellectual evolution is always based on the scientific study that a civilization carries out, and India was definitely at the pinnacle of scientific work and glory while the rest of the world was still living in jungles and dark ages using instruments that are today described as primitive. It will be better if the author of this book talks about more about India's history of science than me, because I'm not the expert. He is the expert. He has obtained his doctorate. His expertise comes from his, scientific and academic study of the subject. Uh, he has obtained his doctorate from the New Delhi-based Jawaharlal Nehru University's Center for Studies in Science Policy. He recently defended his PhD thesis successfully earlier this year, and now we can be called with the prefix Dr. Sabareesh PA. Welcome to the event, Sabareesh. Uh, his multidisciplinary academic research at JNU includes areas of traditional medicinal knowledge, intellectual property rights, and Indian philosophy of science with related research publications. His origins are in Andhra Pradesh, but he was born and brought up in Tamil Nadu. He studied in Kerala and Karnataka before reaching Delhi to pursue his doctorate studies. Because of such a vast exposure in different geographical areas of India, he's a polyglot, comfortable in conversing in at least 6 languages: Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, Hindi, and English. Indians, as you all know, right from their birth, are exposed to many languages. But learning the language and becoming comfortable in speaking in the language only indicates the academic excellence and the quest for knowledge that Sabareesh has had throughout his life till date. It is an achievement and shows his caliber. So I congratulate Sabareesh on his book. Uh, Before joining JNU in 2018, Sabareesh has worked as a consultant at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, which is nothing but CSIR, popularly known as CSIR. He has also worked in the Ministry of Health Sciences and at a intellectual think tank called as Vijnana Bharati, or VIBA, which is a social organization promoting the scientific spirit in India. Um, uh, with an Indian flavor, scientific spirit with an Indian flavor. So, I welcome Sabareesh. The book is available on Amazon and it is priced $4.99, but comes with a discount. So I'm going to share the Amazon link in just a while as Sabareesh is speaking in the chat box, in case any of the participants here, without which this program is not possible, is interested in buying and reading the book. I strongly recommend it. I've read this book. It's quite interesting. Please buy the book and spend time reading it to understand the scientific glory of India, so that you are well equipped knowledge wise to counter anybody who says that India doesn't have or Indians don't have a scientific temper. Uh, so this book needs to be spread, and this scientific inquiry needs to be encouraged. The spirit needs to be encouraged among Indians, and this book is going to be a valuable contribution in that effort. So I thank Sabareesh for writing this book, and I strongly recommend people to buy it and read it. I also asked the participants some administrative announcements. Please keep your mics on mute so that there is no disturbance while the speaker is speaking and while this conversation is carried forward. I also asked you to, if you have any Wi-Fi issues with your network, uh, please keep your videos off so that at least the audio is clearly heard by you and there is no disturbance in hearing what the speaker, our expert here, has to say on the subject. So thank you so much for joining. And if you have any questions while the conversation is on, please post it in the chat box or in the Q&A box. I, on behalf of you, will take it up and post it to our speaker today so that he can answer your questions. But first, let both me and Sabareesh have this discussion. Let us dive into this book discussion. And I'll ask the most important question that comes to anybody's mind to Sabareesh first. Um, okay, so let me ask you, Sabareesh, this will be my first question. Why did you choose to write this book? What drove your interest in this subject? I did read the introduction to the book, which talks about a young scholar who got inquisitive about India's scientific history, and he went about searching for this knowledge in a prestigious university's library. So that's a very interesting story to tell. How did you choose the subject, and what are the sources that you went to and relied upon while writing this book? I see that you have listed around 415 odd references in the bibliography of this book. How long did it take you to do this research for the book? Could you just tell our audience this much?
Yeah, sure. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity, Vipindra sir. And it has been a wonderful journey writing the book and simultaneously going through the PhD research work. And for the listeners' knowledge, like my PhD research is totally into different subject because the entire history of science in India cannot be a thesis topic on its own. So it was my passion to write this book, and I have been thinking to write about this book for the last 8 or 9 years. But to get into the right methodology, to get into the right references, bibliography, that itself was a challenging job because you cannot just cook story out of the sky. And into when it comes to facts, you need to give the right resources, right references. So that is when I got admission into JNU for a PhD. I learned about the research methodology, how usually PhD is done, how the knowledge is unearthed, be it into the social sciences or be it into the applied sciences. So that is when in our libraries, we have plentiful resources regarding history of science in India. Of course, definitely they were untouched. They were lying untouched for so many years. That is what I understand. Because there are some books which, over the last 20, 30 years, I was the first one to, to, to take the book. Because there has been, no one has taken it in between or like long back, maybe 10 or 15 years, someone has taken. And then I had the opportunity to go through the book. So the thing is, like, since my childhood, as I was part of Vigyan Bharati, I've been hearing about India's glorious past in science and technology, but I hadn't come across a solid book or a solid content which would surprise me with about this particular can say intuition. So that is when I found the resources, I was really excited and I started to write about or started to make notes as I read. And in fact, book cannot be written overnight. So the notes that I accumulated over the last over 3 or 4 years, that is what finally came out as a book. And in JNU particularly, the JNU has access to libraries across the world. So we get access to many library contents, be it research articles, be it research books, be it encyclopedias, that are usually not available in the libraries, but are available in the libraries in the form of e-copies. So that is how I had referred to almost 600 to 700 references, but I felt certain references, they were not suitable to be referred because they had contradicting claims and the methodological perspective in that sense. I found certain needs to be, so that is how the 415, as you mentioned, that number comes into being. So and I took like around 3.5 to 4 years to write the book. And once I had put out the idea with Garuda Prakash, and they were really interested because the founder himself, Dr. Sankaran Sanu, he himself he has interest in history of science. That is that is how the book came into being. And here we are with the book. The last February we had the book launch at JNU. and the Minister of Science and Technology, Dr. Jitendra Singh sir had come. It was a good, it was a fairly a good launch, book launch.
How did you get inquisitive about this subject? I believe there is a story behind it, right? So, if you can just share that story to my audience, please, to our audience.
Yeah, but in JNU, like JNU is known for the debate, the left versus the right, the so-called left versus the right. That is the easiest way to explain. Or else I will take another 10 minutes to explain what the left versus right exactly is. So one we have like a group of people, or to be precisely saying a group of scholars who keep on telling, or a group of professors who keep on telling that India's history, it starts from the from the Mughal or from the Delhi Sultanate period. But it is actually the contradictory. We have a glorious past, be it scientific, be it political, be it economic, be it social, and it dates back to the ancient period, even before the Christian era begins. Even before that, even before the thousands of years, there are recorded history. I'm not talking about I'm not talking about heard something that I've heard, but recorded history I'm talking about. So that is when when I went to the library and I asked them, ki, where are these certain books that are related to history of science. That is when they showed me to the no to the to this particular ninth floor of the library. Our JNU library, the main library, is a 12-floor library, and apart from that, there are several libraries within the centers that have dedicated books related to the respective subjects. So even in my center, the Science Policy Center, also I found several books, and even in JNU also I found certain books. But only after I went into the methodological or research work that I understood that whatever the propaganda has nothing to do. It was just a fake propaganda. So I think this is a story you're referring to, if I'm not.
Yeah, that is right.
Yeah.
Also, I had this question about you dedicated this book to the Guru Shishya Parampara of India. Why do you think this concept of Guru Shishya very important in the Indian knowledge systems is growth? Today, self-study, all these modern research methodologies, these make it possible for the vast resource of knowledge, to be accessible, easily accessible. So when that is so, one of the important criticism that Indian knowledge system has is that it is passed on orally. Basically, being the oral tradition, it means that the knowledge dies when the scholar dies. So was there any way this Guru Sishya Parampara helped in transfer of knowledge, and are written forms of knowledge any better? What is your opinion on this subject?
In the Indian tradition or the Bharatiya tradition, we have a great reverence to this Guru Shishya Parampara, because Guru is someone who enlightens us. I mean, I personally believe that if our parents were the first one to give us birth, I personally believe that it is the teacher or the Guru who gives us the second birth. Because the first is like you're being giving a physical birth, but the intellectual and the psychological birth, I believe, based on my experience, is at the hands of teacher. Methods may be different. Maybe at the in the Indian, the schools are known to punish the students. That is also one of the proven methods. But these days, things are changing into intellectual activities. I think that teachers have a very great role in molding the students, the scholars, and that actually gives a great thrust for the development of a nation, for a society, and that forms the bedrock of a society, in fact. So the Indian knowledge system's growth, in fact, has its very strong root in the Guru Shishya tradition. That has, it has been going on for like so many centuries. Even today, also we can see Guru Shishya Parampara across Bharatvarsh, irrespective of region, irrespective of religion, we see this. And in I mean, self-study is something, once you acquire the methodology to do study, then I think self-study is always a good option to go through, because this book is altogether the result of self-study only, because I didn't have any external help. Once I had understood the methodology of this, how to do research, then I was all on my own. And definitely I took opinions from others how to access the resources and what new resources that I should get. And as you had asked about India's oral tradition, that is, we have a Shruti tradition, that is mouth to mouth transmission of knowledge. But the oral tradition, the knowledge, the depth of knowledge, it takes place only if there is only one scholar. No, but if it's a tradition, if it's a culture, wherein the entire Indian subcontinent takes that particular path, that is, every single scholar is trying to understand the vagaries of knowledge database, the oral tradition, through the oral tradition, then it's a living tradition. Maybe you can burn like 1,000, 10,000 copies of manuscripts, but you cannot burn like lakhs and crores of scholars. So that is how it lives. And anyone who doesn't have access to the book, he can definitely read from from the try and understand from the scholar. So I'm just giving a vague example. So it doesn't die easily, but I think the even today also we have the impact, wherein no, we still have the oral tradition, that is wherein history or in philosophical aspects of any knowledge is transmitted through orally, through songs, through lullabies, through shlokas, through bhajans. So all these has several impacts, several contexts in this. So it is, I mean, I would not believe that oral tradition, no, it wouldn't last long. Maybe its impact has decreased, but definitely it has a very strong, no, very strong network basis. And this Guru Shishya Parampara, it actually helped in transfer of knowledge, not only qualitatively, but also quantitatively. It transferred knowledge over a vast region of land, wherein there were scholars, there were sannyasins, there were rishis who kept on traveling, and they spread Vedic knowledge. They spread knowledge that was good for society, related to health and hygiene, and related to religion, philosophies. So these are all available in the in the history of Bharatvarsh. But one needs to read, understand it in its own perspective. If you're trying to look at Indian philosophical aspect or the Indian Guru Shishya Parampara from the Western philosophical perspective, then maybe you would not get the truest intention of Guru Shishya Parampara or the Indian knowledge system. So one needs to look at it, at the independent level.
Okay. Um, my participant should know Sabareesh is only in his 20s. So look at the kind of wisdom that,
30s, sorry,
yeah,
30s,
in early 30s, yeah. So early
early
30s.
30s, yeah.
So the kind of wisdom that he has acquired, hats off to you, Sabareesh. Thank you so much. So I have another question for you. I get to see this very interesting YouTube videos of Khurshid Batliwala, who holds a master's in mathematics from IIT Bombay. I mean, that's what comes to my mind when you talk about this Guru Sishya Parampara, where in that very popular video, Badliwala, who's actually a Parsi, he's not a Hindu, he's a Parsi. He talks about India's ancient science, ancient scientific capabilities, and he, talks about how India had the wisdom of human evolution, how they knew Earth was round several centuries before, other centuries accepted this as a fact. And even this heliocentrism, even before Nicholas Copernicus and other Greek astronomers talked about sun as the center of the solar system. So he also, has this very interesting, I mean, all these Greek astronomers have been credited with this knowledge, but actually these knowledges had their origins in India. And he also talks about this Arundhati Vashishta tradition, which Indian marriages have, where, I mean, Vashishta they're a very popular Rishi couple, Arundhati and Vashishta, and how, Indians named a two-star system that is several light years, several thousand light years away from Earth. They identified that it is a two-star system with their, despite the fact that this two-star system is in the Great Bear constellation and it's so far away from Earth. And also, the way the two-star system functions. Basically, normally what happens is a two-star system, there's one star and the other stars goes around it. But in this interesting two-star system, Arundhati Vashishta, the stars actually go around each other. So, I mean, Batliwala very jocularly says that husband and wife need to be like the Arundhati Vasishta two-star system. Instead of the other star system where one spouse moves around the other. So, I mean, he makes a joke out of it, but the idea behind what he says is that Indians had that great depth of knowledge to identify uh, that star in which is you can see from through your naked eye. I mean, which you can identify in this great bear constellation. It is a two-star system, and also to realize that the two-star system kind of moves around each other instead of one moving around the other. So this knowledge is something fascinates me. That Indians knew about it 5,000, 10,000 years ago, even when we know that at that point in time there were no telescopes as we know it in modern times. How did Indians know this knowledge? I mean, it's kind of quite interesting that the astronomical capabilities of Indians were quite high. You have touched upon this in astronomy as Indians practiced and mathematics in your book. Can you just elaborate on what this is all about?
Yes. Actually, the subjects astronomy and mathematics are both correlated, and they have I mean, coincidentally they have a link to your previous question, that is the oral transmission of knowledge. So when I mean, being the Indian subcontinent, astronomy was something that was very important because ours was the monsoon type of territory wherein agriculture had a great role to play. So to have a calculation about the arrival of monsoon was something that is very much required, be it for the sowing of seeds, be it for the for trade purposes, whether to travel or not, be it for shipping, and be it for other purposes, for the for the celebration of festivals, for the cultivation of crops, mainly cultivation of crops. So in this regard, the it was important to measure the distance, and that is where the mathematical aspect comes. And so all these things, all these aspects, they have quite critical aspect in this. And when it comes to the aspect of oral tradition, so these were regularly known. Not even these days we find grandmothers, grandfathers in our own home who, without seeing the calendar, they tend to know what day it is today by just seeing the sky. I have seen a couple of very senior grandmothers who have an idea about what it is, which year it is. They try to tell, and they have a good idea about the monsoonal aspects, all these things, and being the Indian calendar system. So this has been itself a orally transmitted knowledge database. And when it comes to the Arundhati Vasishta, yes, definitely. And how they arrived at this aspect without any external instruments is something that fascinated me also. But my conclusion, or I would like to put forth that they had a basic understanding about how the nature transforms itself, and what the Panchama Bhutas can do, and how they transform the surroundings and all. So I think that is how they came across to this. They did not have, and by having a good understanding about the internal prakriti, that is our own body being a miniature version of the external nature, by having a very good idea, a critical thinking about our own aspects, our own body aspects, and comparing it with the external aspects. I have read in several of the treatises, in several of the books, that they compared it specifically related to health, specifically related to the medicinal properties, medicinal aspects of the tridoshas. We find that the external prakriti is totally in matching with the internal prakriti. So I think these are the subtle methodologies which the ancient rishis have used to arrive at certain findings, which are really amazing to us today. But again, since I'm still a student, so I will definitely go deep into it in the coming days, and I would like to explore more into it, these aspects.
Okay, so on the book cover of this particular book that you have written, as well as the chapters on medicine that you have mentioned about India's capabilities in surgery. Particularly under stalwarts such as Shushruta and Charaka and their eponymously titled treatises. So, in particular, you mentioned that in 1793-94 period, there were reports in Madras Gazette and in the Gentleman's Magazine, where it talks about a Parsi soldier who was part of the East India Company's army, the British East India Company's army, who got his nose, which was mutilated by Tipu Sultan's army soldiers, reconstructed by an Indian in Pune. So you have mentioned that in your book also. How much of this fact is reflected in today's textbooks, be it history or medical books, and how much of it is recognized? These capabilities are recognized by the medical scientific community. Why is there a dearth of information on such medical capabilities of Indians who are basically pioneers in most medical practices today, including inoculation?
Yeah, the case is about a Parsi soldier called Povasji. He was employed with the British East India Company, at the Bombay Presidency, and that is when the Anglo-Mysore War happened. So in the in 17 in the year 1792, so one of the his this so he was captured. Povasji was captured as prisoner of war by Tipu's army, and one of his hand and his nose were taken away, was chopped off or mutilated. So in the this happened in the 1792 Anglo-Mysore War, and in 1793 uh, he was given a surgery by a surgeon named Kumar in Pune, and this was witnessed by two British medical officers. One is Collie Loin Lucan, and who was the chief surgeon of the Medical Board of Madras, and he documented it in the Madras Gazette in the year 1793. And further in 1794, this particular surgical procedure, it was again written or again documented or again published in the Gentleman's Magazine in London. And it talked about a surgical procedure that was previously unknown to the entire Europe. So, and that is when the Europe for the first time came to know about a surgical procedure that was successful, that was easier, and that was more, it could be done on a at a faster scale. And this particular surgical procedure, it was developed gradually. And in the year 1850, that is 20 years later, Joseph Constantine Carpio, he performed the first rhinoplasty surgery in England with the same procedure and technology. And he refers in his book to the Sushruta Samhita, Charak Samhita, and also to the procedure performed by Kumar in Pune, that is 20 years earlier. And these references are all available in the internet, in some corner of the internet. You just need to search and go into it. But as you said, how far is this reflected in textbooks? I would say I have not found any such critical or crucial information like this in any of the textbooks in India, be it medical books, be it the school textbooks or any other books. Maybe in some research thesis, someone has mentioned it because he has researched on that topic. Apart from that, I have not come across any of the aspect in reflecting such medical aspects. And coming to inoculation, we had this perspective. We had the idea of inoculation. That is it was called a Suchi Bodha, wherein smallpox it was inoculated, and chickenpox was also there were techniques to inoculate. And we have recorded references wherein in the Awadh and in the Bihar and also in the Bengal, wherein the smallpox it had a greater effect. So there the inoculation or the Suchi Bodha was practiced massively so as to keep the smallpox at bay. So there are many such references, and if you ask me why are they not available in textbooks, I would say of the colonial mindset. maybe it's changing gradually, but it is to be visible, it is to be seen. And I think that in the years to come, it is important for us to tell our generation about the true history. We need to tell them that our history is not about the Sultanates, about the British. We have had a very glorious past even before that, be it from the perspective of science, politics, culture, society, or any aspect of any knowledge database. We had a very glorious past that much predates to what we we even still know now. Just that we need to look at knowledge with a different lens, and we should stop seeing knowledge only from the Western perspective, but also from the Eastern perspective.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Sabareesh. In fact, if the participants have any questions, you can just post it in the chat box. I'll ask the question to Sabareesh. But before that, I'll take one more question from my side. Sabareesh, I'm a student of defense studies and technologies. Okay. So obviously, I'm very keen to understand what you have written on the rocketry technology that Indians possessed even before the Britishers came to India, and how this technology, rockets for military use, surprised the British in battle. The military rocket, as we know today, Indians were the pioneers to it. The Indian kingdoms used it extensively in battle, in military warfare, and there are recorded history of this even in the 15th century, current era. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So, and are there any evidences that you have produced in this regard in your book?
Yes, there are several evidences which have referred in the book, and all the references, they were left behind by the British themselves. And as someone told, and some very good historian told, that whatever we know about Bharat is from the mouths of the British. To some extent, that is true, and that is true because we follow an English, the language which we use is English. So to access, and the internet also has, it's easily accessible to access the English databases. So definitely there are several of the databases or the references available online. And as early as the 1400 AD, there is a treatise called Akasha Bhairava Kalpa, which talks about the rockets. When we say rockets, it's
You got muted,
18.
Sabareesh. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
So at that time, in the Akasha Bhairava Kalpa, they mention about the terms used to explain the rocket is Bana, Agneya Agninalika. So in this sense, these are the terminologies that were used to define what a rocket is. And when it comes to the historical aspect, or the, as you said, from the military perspective, in the year 1563, the Vijayanagara Empire used rockets against the Deccan Sultans in the Battle of Talikota. And the Marathas, they also had used iron-based cylinder rockets at the Third Battle of Panipat against the Afghan forces. And in the during the Anglo-Mysore War also, the rockets were used by Tipu's army against the British forces. And this is when in 1773, James Forbes, he found that the Marathas which they used the rockets, it traveled at least for the 940 meters, which was almost close to 1 kilometer, and it had good impact. It actually threatened the horses, the elephants, and therefore the military formation was really scattered through the use of rockets. And some of the rockets, they had swords in the front side, and that actually caused more havoc in the enemy's fence. And so during the 1792 and 1799, in the Anglo-Mysore War, the rockets were extensively used by the Mysore army also. And it is at that time when William Congreve, who was a British army officer, he found the rocket interesting and he took it to the British. and it was shown to the British Prime Minister and the British War Minister, and they found that these can be used in the in the Anglo-French War in the European continent, and so that is how the Congreve rockets evolved uh, in the during the early 1800s, and these rockets they were used against Napoleon Bonaparte at the Battle of Boulogne, at the Battle of Copenhagen, and the very decisive Battle of Waterloo in the year 1814. And we all know what was the result of Battle of Waterloo, and and the rockets were used. That particular rockets, it has its base in the Indian subcontinent, wherein starting from the 1400s, this has been gradually evolving. However rudimentary it was, but it has its evolution in the Indian subcontinent, be it because of the use of Vijayanagara Empire, be it because of the use of Maratha Empire, be it because of the use of Mysore. So it has its evolution in the Indian subcontinent. And as to how crucial the rockets were uh, for the defeat of Napoleon Bonaparte, will need to be the research needs to be taking place. It needs to be researched further.
Okay, and one of the subjects that you uh, talk about is the Vedic period, science during the Vedic period, and this is about women scholars and the treatment that they got from their men counterparts in that period. So generally the criticism from the West and modern day feminists, as we know them, is that India's is patriarchy apart. Uh, no, India's patriarchy doesn't allow them, give them any importance. It doesn't give them any respect. So that is the kind of thing we have heard about. But what are your findings in your research as far as status of women scholars in science, pursuing science and scientific study during the Vedic period is concerned?
Well, I have used the word Rishikas, and Rishika, it's not, I have not invented the word, but these words have been in use since the Vedic times. If there was a Rishi, then there was also a Rishika. It was the counterpart of a Rishi who took part in the who took part in the knowledge generation, who took part in the Vedic studies, and there are also several hymns in the Vedas that indicate the prominent status, social status, and designation that was given to women. And in the annexure, you can find two annexure wherein the different Vedic hymns all the four Vedas, they refer to different terms that has been adored to the womanhood. And they all have its own philosophical intentions, philosophical meanings. And to read those things, it is so interesting. And the meaning of those words are also really interesting as to why it is being given to them. And so, what I want to say is that in the Vedic period, men and women were at par in the fields of education, in the fields of religion, in the fields of all social aspects. And women's access to education during the Vedic period is evident from the names of several Rishikas, as I was told earlier. And Panini, he mentions the names of several Vedic scholars, such as Khathi, Kalapi, Pahvich, Gargi, Maitreyi, and the participation of women scholars in the Vedic assemblies and academic assemblies, and also in battles. It shows that there was the absence of gender bias, and the coming to philosophical aspect also, the conception of Prakriti and Purusha, apart from the the inseparable idea of Shakti and Shaktiman, they are also part of the possible cosmic creation. This gave a strong uh, foundation for the non-biasedness. And coming to the Sangam era also, there are many Rishikas such as Avayar, Karekal Ammayar, Mangai Karasi, Andal, and several other women sages who have contributed towards knowledge generation, be it towards the philosophical ideas. So, but I think, based on my readings, I think during the medieval period, wherein all the mishaps happened, wherein there were constant invasions, at that time the need for greater muscular power that has had arisen, and it caused the natural degradation of the society. But however, coming to the modern times also, I'm just cutting short because it's not possible to explain the entire, the evolution of womanhood starting from the Vedic period. But coming to the modern perspective, there has been great examples, even after having so much of social disasters, social political disaster. There are many examples wherein women have turned up to contribute, be it in the field of science and technology, be it in the field of research and development. There are so many examples to say, and I think definitely women will need to play a greater role in development of India in the years to come. There are many more examples in the book. I mean, it's not possible to go into all the examples, but I just encountered some few examples.
Yeah, just I mean, that is what I expect from you at this point in time, that you give an idea of what people can expect when they buy and read this book. So that I mean, if they want more details, they can always go back to your book and read them and get the more necessary information. So okay, so another aspect is you talked about this. Now, what I see is one of the recent surge in among the seekers of knowledge is that the idea of decolonization. This is something that people have started studying seriously. You have also touched a little bit about this in your book. We also know that the Supreme Court advocate J. Sai Deepak has written an excellent book on the subject of decolonization, and his two more in this trilogy are coming out very soon. Is going to be published, written by him. In your book, you specifically deal with subject of science and how colonization has had an impact during the British period in India on science. So, you also touch upon the medieval period, the Muslim rule period, when, about science in India at this point in time also. Can you just tell us what happened to Indian scientific traditions during these two important period in history of India, and how the subjugation of the Indian people by foreign invaders, what sort of impact it had on scientific spirit and scientific study in India?
I mean, the invaders, both of them being, the flag bearers of two different Abrahamic religions. But I think the Britishers had learned their lesson because they were the one to evolve first. The Christians were the one to evolve first, and they had understood that war and glory doesn't take anywhere. So, but the Muslim invaders, they were ferocious people, and they just physically destroyed the universities, the temples, wherein they were the sheds of knowledge generation. So the best example that I can give is the Nalanda University, which was burnt down to ashes, and so that is how the destruction happened during the Mughal or the Sultanate periods. Whatever knowledge was haram for them was to be destructed, to be totally wiped off on the face of earth. So they used the power of sword. But what amazed me is about how the British systematically destroyed the the Guru Shishya Parampara tradition of Bharat. And as you had earlier told me, the Guru Shishya Parampara tradition, which it had in every village, the Adams report and the other surveys undertaken by the British in the Madras Presidency, in the Bengal Presidency, in the Punjab, where like they got to know that every village had a school in India, and irrespective of caste and religion, every student, every children of a home had access to knowledge, be it the school knowledge, be it the knowledge taught in the school, or be it home taught. There are also tradition of home taught children. So every single uh, population, every single village had a school, and a large number of students were educated in those times. The reason why they wanted to do this vast surveys was that after the British had arrived, they had a good idea about the other physical aspects as to what are the resources available in the Indian subcontinent. But one thing they could not have an understanding was the knowledge, how the knowledge was generated in the Indian subcontinent, because it was too diverse and it matched the requirements of the local challenges, local issues. So that is how the knowledge was generated. And these gurukulas, the mutts or the ashrams, they were funded by the local guilds or the local trade groups, which actually invested in the gurukulas in the modern sense, so that they could evolve knowledge and solve the problems related to the society and all, which indirectly or directly help the guilds or the traders to, to generate more revenue, take forward their businesses. So it was a kind of give and take. So the British, they through the taxation systems, they destroyed the indigenous trade guilds, indigenous trade mechanisms, and this in turn affected the funding of the gurukulas. And that is when the so-called modern education system or the urban-based education system, it started evolving, wherein only the rich could study. And that is why even today also we still have an education system that is mostly urban-based. But if you go to the rural areas, the comparatively education systems are too low. But this was not the case before the British came. Even during the Mughal invasion or during the Delhi Sultanate invasion, there were uh, large amount of gurukulas and pathshalas at the rural areas because the penetration was too low. But bringing a taxation system that is that will have a blanket effect across the territories, that really impacted. And in this aspect, again, the oral tradition, it actually survived even still also, because when the pathshalas were closed, the students, the teachers, they were still, they were home learned, and it caused a great, to some extent, it kept on prolonging. But one generation, two generation, three generation, how long can it be, conserved? So this I found out during the research or during the drafting of the book. And in this aspect, even Indian science aspect also, because education, the foundations of education, it has all the aspects. So in the book we have mentioned, we have tried to find out the syllabus that was taught in the various territories, be it in the Malabar region, be it in the Awadh region, be it in the Bengal region, be it in the Punjab region. The knowledge that was taught there was totally different. But though they all had some basic foundations about Bharatiya ethos, Bharatiya culture, Vedic knowledge, Vedic systems. But again, apart from that, the local knowledge was also taught in the local language so that the local economy could flourish. So this was altogether a different system which the British had through the taxation system clearly wanted to destroy. So the both of them
Okay.
had different methods of subjugating knowledge system. One used force, the other used, through friendly, in the name of friendly taxation systems, they destroyed it. And this is very well described by Dharampal in his book The Beautiful Tree, which I have referred to the book. And so that is what the Indian knowledge system was, was misused by the foreign invaders.
Okay. So we are actually running out of time. So what I'll do is I'll restrict to two questions from here on, and participants haven't asked questions, but there have been congratulatory messages from the participant for the work that you have done. Sabareesh, they want to congratulate you for the work that you have done. They find it very interesting.
Thank you, sir.
So that particularly, I've got a message from Professor B.C. Chauhan, who congratulates you for your work. And there have been queries from other participants as to where they can find your book. So I've also posted the link of the Amazon link, for them to access it. So that is for your information. So the next question I want to ask you about is regarding the lessons that have been learned, by Indians who are the present day Indians from this book. So particularly with regard to this call for self-reliance in the scientific field, because I believe that instead of without scientific development in science, an Indian cannot progress because it affects all aspects of human activity, be it agriculture, be it health, education, wealth generation, you name it. So science impacts all of these human activities. So, what are the lessons that you think that modern day Indians need to learn from this book?
Recently, when I went for the Dehradun Literature Festival, as well as in the Haldwani Literature Festival, I got the same question, a little bit differently posed. It was posed by two different school students. One was in ninth standard, the other was, I think, in seventh or eighth standard. So, why do we need to learn history? They asked me. So I said that what do you want to do after 12th? He said he wants to do engineering. And what after engineering? He said he wants to go for a job. Okay, just assume that you're going for interview. What are the documents you're going to carry? So he said certificates. He said the accreditations given by the other people, and he will also carry a resume. So I said, what are all there in the resume, or what all content will be there in your CV? He said, whatever I did, how much marks I scored in 10th, how much marks I scored in 12th, how much marks I scored in engineering, and what are the other extracurricular activities I have done, and what and all, where I stay, all those things about my age. So I said, history is all about that only. History is about your land, your people, your culture, your society. That is what you learn in history. And how important it is for you to show your CV to your work provider. It is important for us to show our own history in the right perspective to the nation. Because only then we would travel in the path shown to us by our ancestors, by our, by our, by our previous generations, because they have had a great role in in churning and in resurrecting this nation. It's not single generation, it's hundreds and thousands of generation that has passed. So the from right my only intention to write this book was that the current generation, the upcoming generation should possible for them to read and understand about the history of science in India in the briefest possible way. That is why the title itself is A Brief History of Science in India. So, so I think the entire book itself is a lesson for everyone, to whoever wants to know what we were and where we stand with regards to history of in the science and technology and scientific heritage. Because I would want to use the word heritage because a certain thing practiced again and again becomes a culture. And when a culture is practiced for millennium together, it becomes part of heritage. And that heritage cannot be erased at all. It can find gaps here and there, it can find a void here and there, but heritage is going to continue because it is going to be alive somewhere the other way in some or the other region in the subcontinent, and some or the other time when the time suits, when the uh, when the scenario suits, it is going to pop up again and again and pose in front of you to show you what the history is about you. However hard the other whoever invades or whoever comes and tries to take away it belongs to you, the history has again and again shown that India has not been subjugated at all. Some or the other place, something was happening, some revolt was happening. So this is our history. We should show interest in our history, and particularly history of science is a very fastly growing multidisciplinary discipline or subject. And in the future, I see that history of science would definitely find interest in all the Bharatiya scholars. I think this is my overall this thing. So I feel the entire book itself is a is a lesson that we can learn for both scholars, for both layman readers, for general readers also.
Absolutely, I agree with you on that. That is why in my opening remarks I said that the the title of the book needed to be, a stupid's guide, because or an ignorant person's guide, because India cannot be ignorant of its scientific history. It cannot be ignorant of the science that Indians have developed, and for that reason alone, this book is very important and needs to be prescribed to probably students of history and students of science in every college and school. That is my conclusion after reading your book. I have one last question. We are almost out of time. We just have 1 minute, but I think we can squeeze in a few more minutes to ask this final question. I am. There are lots and lots of congratulatory messages and appreciative messages pouring in for you, Sabareesh, for the work that you have done on my chat box. It's not visible to everybody. They can actually write to me privately in the chat box. So lots and lots are coming, and a couple of them have just now confirmed that they have bought the book instantly. Right now, they have bought the book. So congrats to you on that.
Thank you.
And my last question is this: we'll squeeze in maybe 2-3 minutes more from the scheduled time. Your previous book, I believe, was on meditation and self-consciousness. Correct me if I'm wrong. So, how critical is
Yeah.
yoga for having a scientific temper? What can a person practicing yoga achieve in science? So these are my two important questions based on your first book, which was on meditation and self-consciousness.
So again, like had we not been influenced by the Western philosophical perspective, India would have been a nation which would believe that science and spirituality are the two sides of the same coin. Because science advocates truth and spirituality lets you know the path to access truth in your own way. Just that the spiritual path may not be the same for everyone, but yes, the scientific path can be the same for everyone, because anyone who is undergoing an experiment will definitely come to the same results. But the spiritual path, it has there are different paths, and based on your psychological capabilities, based on your your physical abilities, your perseverance to access truth or knowledge, it can be different. So this is why the uh, Western civilizations don't accept science and spirituality as it one and the as the two sides of the same coin. But what I believe is that based on the Eastern philosophical perspectives, all our knowledge base, database, all our knowledge systems, they have their basis or foundation, or fundamentally they believe in the perspective of Panchamahabhutans, which are the which are the Agni, Vayu, Apa, and all the other things. That is the Prithvi, Agni, Apa, Akasha, Vayu, and all. And every these things, they are all part of the nature, and they have their own permutations and combinations to bring about change in the nature. So it is this understanding that forms the basis of yoga also, because whatever is there inside us is a miniature version of whatever is there surrounding us. But the Western philosophy doesn't see it as this. They see it in a different sense. They see it in a different method. So this particular conjunction, I would say, is is different. And when it comes to yoga, we tend to understand what our body is all about and how we can connect our body to the external environment. So I think this is also about science, and whether the modern science or modern scientists call it as metaphysics or whatever they want to call, that is because of their adherence to their philosophical methods. But whatever Indian paramparas has been through, there are many people who have underwent this particular process. There are also scientists who have correlated the scientific methods and also yogic methods in the derivation of truth. So it is altogether different subject. And my first book was after I underwent Vipassana practice, Vipassana meditation, wherein I tried to, it really empowered me, be it from the psychological perspective, be it from the mental perseverance. So without sadhana, without yoga, I don't think the book would have been possible. So I would also like to thank the Vipassana Research Institute at this moment for having guided me to perform yoga, yogic meditation and all.
Okay, Sabareesh, I think Professor B.C. Chavan is raising his hands. I don't know if he wants to ask a question. He's showing the book in his. He
Yeah, he's
has the
showing
book
me book.
copy and
Yeah, this
he's
is,
showing it.
I have the book with me. And I
Okay, sir.
again would like to congratulate Sabrish for this wonderful job, which he has done for, to commemorate or to glorify the Indian past. So it's a really great job. Which I like the most is this annexure part that you have added here, because this I find very interesting, because for me also, because let me just share with you all this August gathering. I'm working here in Central University of Himachal Pradesh, Dharamshala. I'm a student of physics, I would say, professor of physics. And I'm also involved for this tradition of science, culture, and all for the last history and culture of science for last 10, 15 years. And recently, I am also on the line of, rather, I have started my job of writing a book on this subject for last 5 or 6 years. But I have recently completed this task, and it is under publication again with the Garuda Prakashan. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, yeah. And I was actually told by about your book. I was told by Sakran Sanu himself that your book is there. So then I immediately got it from them, and
Okay.
other two, three books also. And my book is also on printing stage and from Garuda Prakashan. And that is, of course, written in a totally different way. And of course, the same things, most of the same thing, there will be overlaps also. And it is going to be a little bit bigger. It's going to be around 700 pages. So it's going to be published in 2 volumes, possibly.
Okay.
And the title of the book is going to be the history and culture of science in Bharata. So this is what I just want to share with you all, and I congratulate you because I had in mind that I would during the time of your PhD you did this great job. I'm again happy and would like to congratulate you, and this of course this all Bipindra also for organizing such a wonderful session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, sir, on your book. We are hoping to host you as soon as the book is published
Okay, thank
for
you,
a
thank you,
session like this very soon. So
thank
thank
you.
you so much. Thank you for joining. With this, we will conclude today's session. I want to thank Sabareesh. Are you there? I just want to,
Yes, sir. Yeah.
yeah, I want to congratulate Sabareesh on his book, and I want to congratulate Professor Chauhan sir on his book, which will be published very soon, and we are looking forward to it. I thank each and every one of the participants who have joined here today. Okay, there is one interesting question that my executive committee member of Law and Society Alliance, Venkat, has posted. I think we should take up that question because without taking that question, the program will not be complete. He wants to know about the claims made by various professors on the proto-ancient scientific claims in Indian mythology like Ramayana, Mahabharata. For example, Gandhari delivering babies using earthen pots, Vimana traditions and all that. So, Sabareesh, you want to take up that thing? Probably Professor Chauhan can also chip in. Yeah, Sabareesh, you want to go
Uh,
first?
yeah, I would, I mean, I do not know about the test tube babies, but I definitely have something to talk about the Vimanas. Uh, Recently, there was a experiment done at a university at a university laboratory in California. Whatever the dimension is mentioned in the Vimana Shastra, so they created one particular they no, they created one shape. They shaped the Vimana in whatever dimensions it is being mentioned in Vimana Shastra, and they put it into a tunnel test. And that particular experiment, it revealed that the shape, as mentioned, the Vimana, it has a aeronautical suitability, and it can have a flight in case it had the right engine it had. So this is one thing which I wanted to tell, but maybe Chauhan sir can put in more views into this regard. And it is important that we need to differentiate between mythology and science. Certain things could be exaggerated in mythology, not necessarily all the time, but in science cannot afford exaggeration. It has to be fact based. It has to be it should be repeatable by anyone who does the thing, who does the experimentation and all. So I do not know about the test tube babies. Maybe there is some sort of science involved in it, maybe not, but maybe if in case science was involved in it, maybe it was explained in such a way that it suits the oral tradition. So it could be anything. Maybe further research needs to be done in that sense. I think
Yeah,
John sir can throw more light.
just I just want to add to these points, and that kind of survey, that kind of experiment has been done in California, some aeronautics lab or something like that. I also aware of that, and that was also broadcasted through some science channels. That
Yes.
kind of experiment, because they designed that something instrument or whatever they call on the dimensions of that mentioned in Vimana Shastra or whatever. So the important thing is, it's not that they are. I'm again rather against about saying that this is all mythology and all. This mythology word is again a kind of a, a word which has been designed by some vested interests. So it, of course, lots of work, lots of works, research is required to be done in this area, and things will come up. Of course, when the good brains will come in, and they will definitely, something will definitely come out of that. So Vimana, if you talk about, there was a, if you are aware of that, I don't know, it was some in Indian Science Congress. There was this kind of, it was became a kind of controversial issue of
Yeah.
some ISC Bangalore people. They also write an article on that. That was some Shastri and that and all. But I have read that very scientifically they have tried to analyze the things there. But uh, I have seen that paper also, and that clearly they have not. They were not against the description of Vimana Shastra and this Vedic text given by Swami Dayanand Saraswati, and they have not against about it. Rather, even they rather appreciated that thing. What is mentioned about Vimana? There's a complete description of aeroplane, and then even how the pilot is trained and what are the protocol for to become a pilot. These kind of things are also mentioned in there. And whatever is there, the point is, we should not just throw it out and say that this is all bullshit. So we should be patient about it, and we should learn, and we should try to learn more, and things will be very much clear. I'm sure about the test tube baby. That kind of we should, the great thing is that we should appreciate the concept. The concept is something which modern science is going on that same track. The test tube baby, whatever is that. So of course we have a detailed description of this, that how the Gandhari were able to produce 100 or 101 children. So this is something which we need to, which we should welcome, and the thought, we should not just say that it's rubbish. So of course more time is required and more research is required in these areas.
If idea is proven scientifically at a later stage, probably that idea existed.
Definitely, and there are
and
so
idea
many,
was
so many.
promoted
It's
also.
not, there are just two,
Yes, there
so
are.
many,
Yeah.
lots
so
of.
there cannot be too much of coincidence in science. So science is exact,
Yeah.
idea. So if the
Yeah,
exact idea is proven at a later stage, probably the original
definitely,
idea was also correct.
definitely,
And that is what we should.
and I always say this thing, that to be a scientist, you should not you should behave like a scientist. You should not you should be open to accept all kind of thoughts. You should not just be shut down your window.
And,
Then you are again, what is the difference between the other, and you? This, you should be open.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think imagination is something, if it turns out to be accurate, then it is science. So, thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. And thanks, Venkat, for this wonderful question. I think that is the ideal way to conclude this session. Sabareesh, are you there? Can you just say hi?
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
there, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you very
I
much.
can see you now.
Thank you for the
Yeah, I can see you
opportunity.
now. I can see you. And thanks so much. I have put the link for the book once again in the chat box. If any of the participant who is there is interested, you can click it, go to the Amazon website and order it if you want to buy the book. And probably it is available in bookstores also, the physical book. So I wish Sabareesh all the best, and I wish Professor Chauhan all the best for his
Thank
upcoming
you.
book.
Namaste.
And I thank him for joining this event. I thank every participant who has joined and everybody who has commented and who has listened to this wonderful conversation that we have had with Sabareesh today. I wish Sabareesh writes more and more interesting book of this kind. I bless him because I'm elder to him and we come from the same place. So I have that right to bless him. All the best to you, Sabareesh. And thank you so much for
Thank
joining.
you very
Good
much.
evening. We'll meet again another day, another time with another interesting topic. Thanks and good night.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Good.
Namaste.
Namaste.